Hi everyone, I'm Ahana.
And I'm Celine.
And welcome back to another episode at the
We Are Podcast.
So this week has been extremely eventful.
Yeah, it has, because we started high school this week. We're filming this on Saturday, August 21st, I believe.
Yep.
And we've had a full week of school, and actually we're making a Fun Day Friday episode this week that we're going to post on Friday about our first week of school and our experiences and what we thought about it. Keep tuned for that.
And not only that, the world has been falling to shambles this
It
week.
has. There are a lot of things going on with, you probably heard about the Taliban. Like, that is all over the news.
Afghanistan.
Everyone is talking about it. And then Haiti is facing another earthquake. And there are also, like, bombs and wildfires and mental health and lieutenant governors and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, let's start out with the most prominent news update for...
And also, sorry if it sounds a little echoey, because we're in a different room.
We're in a different room than we normally are. We're in our conference room.
I'm realizing how echoey it sounds.
It's fine. It's okay. Okay, so let's start out with the most prominent one for the week, which is the Taliban.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about like what's going on in that whole situation?
So this week I covered the Taliban. Actually, I think I've been like covering.
I think you've covered it like every week besides like one.
Yeah. So I have only 4 news updates because the Taliban one is so long. So just beware and buckle in.
Buckle into your seatbelts and get ready for the ride.
Okay. So on Sunday, Taliban fighters rallied around Kabul and they were awaiting a peaceful transfer of the city. They were like instructed not to go inside, but they were on the brinks of a military takeover. And this happened shortly after they captured the second biggest city and 26 of the 34 provincial capitals in just 2 weeks.
In just 2 weeks.
So, by the way, guys, if you want more background on the situation, we've been following it for weeks. So just check out our other news updates because I'm not going to really talk about
Ahana talks about like the Taliban, what they do, what their goals are, and all
so I'm not going to go over that now because I've done it so many times. But but if you want to hear about that, please check out our other news updates. So basically, they in like a stunning rout of the world, they seized nearly all of Afghanistan in over a week. Despite billions of dollars spent by the U.S. and like NATO, which is like a group of individuals that were trying to prevent this, and they spent it over the course of 2 decades to build up Afghanistan troops, and still they lost despite having great support from the U.S. for the past couple decades and NATO. So it's definitely devastating for so many people. I mean, they just came in so fast. They destroyed everyone, and everyone's scared. And I'll talk a little bit about like what people are fearing later. But in the midst of all this, their president, Ashraf Ghani, left Afghanistan to go to the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. So he basically ditched his own country.
Really? So he's just like, bye-bye, deal with the issues, I'm not helping you.
Yeah, and it's a little difficult because at the same time, I can understand his perspective because the last time that the Taliban took over was in 1996, and they executed the president.
So he's kind of in danger, I guess.
Yes, he thought it would cause more, quote, a flood of bloodshed. So he feared for his life, and so basically in 1996 they captured Kabul, and in 2001 during the 9/11 attack, U.S. troops were sent, and then the rule of the Taliban got like defeated, I guess, but they were still very prominent. And then just this week they took over again after the U.S. was taking away its troops from there. They were extracting all their troops because they thought like this war is never going to end and it's not our war to be fighting. And so on separate news briefings, President Joe Biden and the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg placed the blame squarely on the Afghan national government, despite facing so much backlash from media for their removal of U.S. troops.
Yeah, there definitely has been backlash. Some people think it's going to put a lot of people's lives in danger if we're withdrawing the troops, but there are different perspectives on it.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important thing to note that in like the different parties, majority of the people in both parties say that it was a smart decision for Biden to remove the troops because they didn't want their veterans and people being hurt. But the land that the Taliban took over once the U.S. troops left is rich in $1 trillion of minerals like gold, iron, and copper and silver, which is not only very useful and would be very helpful in the world to help stop like climate change and stuff, but also if the Taliban choose to advance on that privilege, I guess, they would have much more ability to gain influence over their community by boosting their economy.
They would have more power.
Yeah, because when your economy is boosted, your country is just stronger. So people are worrying about that. And in terms of the people in Afghanistan, I'm going to first talk about like U.S. citizens stuck in Afghanistan.
Right.
So these include like the U.S. citizens from the embassy in Afghanistan and the interpreters and allies that were in Afghanistan. So there are still around 5,000 to 10,000 Americans near Kabul that haven't been fully evacuated yet. The State Department even put out a message saying, scratch off that shelter-in-place like suggestion. Now you should queue up and get to the airport. And so there have been a lot of flights. It's been very hurried. But the Afghan people are so scared and desperate to escape Taliban rule that they were seen like climbing on planes, like hanging on to them.
Oh my gosh.
Climbing borders.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Insane. And you could see them, they're just people running on runways, like hanging on planes. Actually, a young national soccer player died from holding onto a plane.
Oh my gosh, I saw something about that. That was so sad.
I mean, he was on the national team, he was young, and he had a whole life ahead of him.
I know.
And even a baby was pictured being given to U.S. troops over the airport security line.
Oh my gosh.
So that just shows how desperate parents are to give their child a better life.
It's such a dire situation to get out of there, and so many people are desperately trying to find ways, and it's so dangerous to the people who are in there too.
Yeah, and I feel so bad for parents. And
I
kids.
know. It's an awful situation.
Yeah, and they really want to get their kids out of that situation. So that kind of shows that. In terms of women and girls' rights, the Taliban promised to protect the rights of women and people as long as they abide by the Sharia laws. So the Sharia laws are basically a set of laws that are based off of like Islamic code, which is Islam is their main religion in that area.
Right.
And the Taliban is based off Islam. But they have a very strict interpretation of it, and it could restrict, and their interpretation of those laws could restrict women even further on things like clothing, studying, and work, despite the Taliban promises that they encouraged women to work and study.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've heard of Malala, who was shot by the Taliban because she spoke out against the unfairness of women not having education.
Yeah, definitely. And they also, so CNN interviewed 3 women, and one of them said, quote, "No one trusts anything that comes out of the Taliban's mouth," said Afghan woman. Pictures of the streets, even 48 hours after the seizing of the capital, show that there were no women on the streets, and the men were desperately buying burqas, which cover you from head to toe, in like this black cloth. And people were saying that wearing a burqa might be the only way for them to stay safe on the streets.
Wow.
So
this is such a desperate situation. Like it's so many people are struggling with this, and it's probably one of the biggest things that's happening. Even though it's not happening in the US as a country, the US is a large part of this, especially since we're withdrawing troops and helping a lot of people who are living there, and a lot of other countries are helping assist Afghan citizens and interpreters and all that. So
but also on the line of like women and what they're thinking about. So in terms of studying, high school girls are scared of whether they will be able to graduate, saying that if the Taliban take over, I will, quote, lose my identity.
Oh yeah, I can see why they think that.
And the Taliban promised to like protect their education rights, but based off previous like instances, for example, in 2001, they were especially violent towards women. Women seen in public without a male relative could be abducted and forced into marriage. And women who were sexually assaulted could be executed.
Oh my God! Oh, that's awful. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing.
Even that, while they're putting on this act of being all good, they were seen recently beating a woman to death with their guns.
What?
Because she refused to feed soldiers because she was, quote, poor and she didn't have enough money to supply those soldiers. So I think a part of the Taliban rules is that if soldiers knock on your door, you have to feed them. I think that was it's kind of similar to like an old rule that we had.
Yeah, in the U.S. during like the Revolutionary War, I think.
Yeah, where you
the Quartering Act, I think it was.
Quartering Act. But it's similar to that. It was basically like the soldiers knocked on her door. They asked to feed
You can't
me.
turn them down.
Yeah. She's like, feed me. She's like, I'm poor. I don't have enough money to feed 15 of you. And they beat her with guns.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Taliban also fired, yelled, and beat up protesters in a crowd for replacing their flag. And that's just the surface of it. Okay, and to end this topic off, activists like Malala Yousafzai, which Celine talked about, have said, quote, I fear for my Afghan sisters. Afghan girls and young women are in a place where I have been in despair over the thought they will never might see a book or hold a book or be in a classroom ever again. Angelina Jolie also joined social media on Instagram for the first time just to spread awareness on these stories and, quote, help share the stories of people who are fighting for their basic human lives. So
I mean, definitely it's an awful situation, and it's like I don't even know what you can do to help, you know. It's like it's so hard because there are so many people, but definitely spread awareness about it. Just talk about it so everyone knows what's going on. I think it's just important to know what's happening.
And this took me 10 minutes and I just touched the surface. Like this is so complex, and
it is.
We'll make an episode of like going in depth.
I think we should just do a whole episode about the Taliban in general.
All right.
Okay, so is that everything?
Yes.
That was a pretty heavy topic.
Yeah, it was.
And we have another heavy topic coming up. So Haiti is facing a high magnitude earthquake that is leaving people devastated. So previously, actually, the Prime Minister of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, right? I think that's his name.
Yes.
Yeah. He was assassinated. So the fact that this earthquake is happening so soon after the assassination makes it even harder for the citizens to deal with. And the earthquake was 7.2 magnitude. Anything between 7 and 7.9 magnitude is considered great and considered like it can cause a lot of destruction.
That's awful.
And it's destroyed more than 100,000 homes and has left 30,000 families homeless. It's so sad. And hospitals, schools, offices, and churches were also demolished or barely damaged, badly damaged, not barely. 2,100 people have died. Actually, more than that even. And 12,268 people were injured. Like, that is it's really destructive. It is. And the U.S. has transported 200 hurt people to the hospital, and there's a threat of a public health disaster because in these circumstances with so many people like homeless and with so much rescue efforts going on, Nadisha Majoba, excuse me if I pronounced that wrong, of the Haitian Health Foundation said, quote, we are preparing for a public health disaster. The sanitation situation is quite critical. It is our hope that we don't have an outbreak of cholera. So there are people sleeping outside because their homes have been destroyed or they're just scared, and it's like raining. There's a ton of torrential floods and rain and mudslides, but people are still sleeping inside because outside because they're so desperate. Oh, wow. And one person told BBC News, quote, we are afraid to go inside, so we sleep on the ground in the street. I don't have a job, I don't have water, I don't have food. My house was destroyed, there is nothing, said another woman. Oh, it's so sad. I know.
Everything's so sad in the news.
I know. I feel so bad for these people. Like, so many homes were destroyed. And Haiti is actually the poorest country in the Americas. So that's like out of South America, Central America, and North America. Okay. It's so sad. And many people are getting into fights over this. There's so much conflict involved because there's not a whole ton of government help because it happened so quickly, and with the new government transition, the new prime minister is Ariel Henry, but he had to step in pretty quickly after the assassination of Jovenel Moise. So there isn't a ton of government aid for a lot of people, and since there are so many people in this dire situation, there are limited supplies. There are some people bringing relief, like Michelle Martelly, who's former president, brought relief supplies to the hospital. But supporters wanted cash donations. One person actually picked up a stone and tried to attack people, and the crowd yelled, "Kill him, kill him." It was to someone giving aid, actually, because there wasn't enough aid for everyone, so people were just getting so mad. And there were gunshots fired around trucks that people thought had aid. A convoy of 4 trucks was looted, and actually 2 surgeons giving relief were kidnapped in Port-au-Prince, which destroyed a truce between Haiti's gangs and just the government. And this really dealt a blow to criminal violence attempts threatening disaster relief. And the hospital actually had to close for 2 days because, one of the orthopedic surgeons who was kidnapped by one of the gangs was I think about the majority of the people in that hospital needed the orthopedic surgeon because they were so injured. So it really just destroyed that hospital. And so many people are getting mad because not everyone has aid. Some people do, but there's not enough to distribute to everyone, right? So people are getting into fights all the time. And it's just a complete disaster and a complete mess. And it's just not a good situation.
All right.
So, yeah.
Another natural disaster.
All right, sorry for all the bleak news. Everything's so sad.
I know.
So, the Caldor fire is happening in California, and I'm sure you've heard of the Dixie wildfire, which was happening in California previously, and was one of the largest in California's history of wildfires. So, the Caldor fire is moving so quickly that it even burned an area half the size of Chicago in less than a week.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was sparked Saturday, and an average of 10,000 acres were burned a day in El Dorado County, and it has charred more than 73,400 acres. And as of Saturday, August 21st, which is the day we're filming, it is 0% contained.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's concerning. Cal Fire said, quote, "With historic drought conditions, there is heavy dead and down fuels throughout the fire area. Northern California remains under fuels and fire behavior advisory." So the fire actually grew 24 times its size from Monday to Wednesday. So that's 3 days, and it grew 24 times its size in 3 days, and it's still not contained. It's still 0% contained.
Okay, just imagine Celine growing to be
24 times my size.
How tall are you?
3 days. I'm 5'7", right?
Okay,
so
5 times
I
20.
know, whatever that is, 20.
That's 1,000.
I don't even know what that is.
No, that's 100 feet.
No, that's 200.
Over.
I don't know. Something.
Probably 200 feet.
Somewhere around there.
Imagine Celine being 200 feet.
I know.
In
3 days. In 3 days. And imagine it being uncontained.
Yeah, so you're just gonna grow to be 100 feet tall.
I know. And a lot of places in El Dorado County are under evacuation or warning of evacuation or just evacuation orders. 23,000 people have been evacuated. And there's also another fire in California, the Cache, I don't really know, fire. It also destroyed more than 150 vehicles and 137 structures. And there were also a ton of evacuations in Lake County for that fire. California's wildfire season has been so incredibly devastating this year, more so than usual. The state's 12 active wildfires swept through more than 1 million acres so far. Think about that, 1 million acres, according to the National Interagency Fire Center.
That's so hard to visualize, but it's such a massive amount.
How much is an acre? I don't.
An acre is huge.
It's a really large portion of land. I know that much. Yeah, if you can look up So the rapid spread of all these fires prompted the U.S.
An acre is 43,000 feet.
Okay, just think of during COVID, they were stay 6 feet apart. Imagine 6 feet, which was this much? But imagine that.
No, 6 feet is way bigger than that.
Yeah, bigger than that.
Because
I can't even spread my hands that far.
Yeah.
But imagine that times I don't even
1,000 times a million.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So, the U.S. Forest Service shuttered 9 national forests in Northern California from August 23rd until September 6th. 3 months ago, roughly 16% of the state was under exceptional drought. And as you can see from this drought, that's causing wildfires to not only spread faster, but be harder to contain. And nearly 50% is experiencing Okay, ignore that statistic I just said. So, areas under extreme drought swelled to about 88% of the state, up from 73% 3 months ago. Just 3 months ago. So it swelled, over 10% in 3 months. CNN meteorologist Robert Shackelford said, quote, as of right now, there is actually no areas of elevated fire risk throughout the West for Friday, but drought conditions will not improve for the West Coast anytime soon. These areas are still seeing rapid worsening drought conditions. So hopefully they can get this fire contained again. By the time you're listening to this episode, it might be way more contained than it was when we were reporting on it. So, all right. That was, we still have one more update.
We have one more update.
All right. And this one is kind of another heavy one.
Yeah.
The second half is a little bit less heavy. I mean,
it's more political and less bomb stuff. But anyway, a U.S. man arrested after bomb threat near Capitol. So a man threatened to unleash a bomb on the U.S. Capitol on Thursday and was arrested after hours long of standoff. So this man was Floyd Roy Roseberry. And he said to be mentally ill and taken into custody after being communicated with using a whiteboard. So they tried to communicate with him using a telephone, but he wouldn't do it, so they used a whiteboard. And then after that, he got out of his vehicle, surrendered, and what's it called? Got captured.
Prosecuted?
No.
Or charged?
He just got
held
captured.
in custody?
Yeah, custody.
Okay.
He got held in custody after that without a fight. They didn't confirm whether he had explosives yet, but we're assuming that he did because in his car it seemed like he had something to detonate a bomb.
Okay.
And the reasoning behind this, we're saying, is that Mr. Roseberry had some losses of his family. His mother recently passed away, and there were other issues with him. And they arrested him. He actually was Afghan, or he said as his reason for doing this, he said that he wanted to protect his patriots, and he said, quote, you can shoot me and kill me right here and blow up 2.5 city blocks and let all the patriots out in the country know. So he was kind of doing it for the quote patriots.
Okay.
He said that the suspect was standing for Afghanistan, saying that Biden should have made sure the Afghans were, quote, all right before we left. So I think he was also very upset about how the handling of the Taliban.
He was not happy with Biden's decision, I think.
Yes, which just ties into the Taliban. It was definite. And he was claiming I need to speak with Biden or I'm gonna blow up people.
Oh, goodness.
He actually made it clear that he didn't really want people to get hurt. He just wanted to do it.
He just wanted his voice to be out there, I guess. He just wanted people to hear what he had to say. Okay.
But they were trying really hard. Also, really weird. He was streaming this entire situation on Facebook. He said that he was defending the Patriots and ready to die for the cause, and that's that.
All right.
Oh, also, one last remark. Many people were linking this to the January 6th rioting, saying that it was in the same area, and actually during the riots, a pipe bomb was left there before the riots. So they're kind of connecting it and saying that he's a terrorist.
Interesting. All right. So is that everything?
That's our first half.
All right. Stay tuned for the second half. We have a lot about coronavirus, Alabama, Greg Abbott, Texas Lieutenant Governors, mental health. All right. So stay tuned. Bye.
Welcome back from the break.
So, after Le Brocorito, that was a mixture of 50 languages, and it was pretty cool. Anyways.
I'm not even gonna try.
Don't. Okay, so our first update is about coronavirus. We actually have a couple. And then the second one is going to be about mental health in the pandemic especially. And in general. So without further ado, let's hop into these news updates.
And it'll be a little bit more brief since the first half was a little long.
The first half is always way too long.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Anyway, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced a nationwide lockdown after the country announced one confirmed
One. Okay, I like how we're over here in the U.S. with like so many, and then New Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're taking precautions, but they have so much less cases than the U.S. has that like just one is a lot to them.
Yeah.
Whereas to us, it's like.
And it's also like one of the strictest lockdowns where everything is closed besides essential services, which honestly, a lot of people are like praising the country for doing this.
I mean, obviously, the country's doing a lot better than.
Excuse me, Miss Thing.
Continue. I'm sorry.
Anyway, New Zealand
God.
was under its strictest lockdown level, and there have been a lot of praise for like going under lockdown, but only 20% of people are vaccinated. So the vaccine rollout has been really, really slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the dude who like got corona, he was said to have like the Delta variant, but it's not confirmed yet, but they think it is, and he was 58 years old and unvaccinated.
Okay.
And then in relation to that, President Biden, the Biden administration, is shipping out the first of the 500 million COVID doses that he promised during the G7 summit. Do you remember when we talked about that? Oh
yeah, I do, but maybe you don't.
Yeah. The G7 summit where like all of the 7 rich countries in the world meet together. So they're sending 488,000 doses to Rwanda throughout the vaccine program COVAX. There's no strings attached, and 200 of the 500 million doses promised will be donated this year, while 300 will be donated next year. 25% is going directly to countries in need, and 75% is going through COVAX. This will also help counter efforts by Russia and China, and you know what they're doing is like they're trying to sell more of their vaccines so that they can gain influence over poorer countries, but this kind of counters that because the US is helping. And then finally, the last little one is the FDA is set to approve the COVID booster vaccine this fall, which me and Celine got Pfizer, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So we both got Pfizer, and the Pfizer vaccine will be set to be authorized by the week of September 20th.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool.
Pretty soon.
Yeah. And the CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, and FDA Commissioner, Dr. Janet Woodcock, said, quote, "We are prepared to offer booster shots for all eligible Americans 8 months after an individual's second dose. This booster is so much more effective against death, severe disease, and hospitalization, and even against the Delta variant." So
cool. That sounds good.
They're hoping it'll be good for like people that got it super early on because they're losing their immunity.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So is that everything?
I think so.
Okay. So now there's the whole vaccine area of the coronavirus, but there's also the mental health area, which I think is important to address. So just mental health in general during the pandemic, especially in the year of 2020, it has been so hard on everyone, especially teenagers, because we're so used to having our routine and going to school, right? Yeah. Waking up, getting ready, brushing our teeth, going to school. You know, we have a whole routine set. And then when that changes and we don't know what's happening, we're scared. We can't go to school. We can't see our friends. Yeah. We're in isolation. That takes a toll on anyone, I think. And just having to adjust to this whole new like way of doing school and way of connecting with people online instead of in person is really hard. And there was this video on CNN that was really sad. It was really sad, but I think it's really important to address. So there was a kid who lived in Baltimore County, Maryland, and he actually took his own life a month and a half into the school year, the online school year. So part of the reason why was because he was so behind on assignments. It was so such a scary time for him, and being online was just not fun. And he texted his mom, and he's like, "I can't take this anymore." And then
it's really so stressful and just mentally.
I know, and I feel so awful for that. Oh God, it's really sad. But so many people have felt this way. I think so many people have just felt helpless. Helpless. Did I say that correctly? Yeah. I think for some reason I feel like I said it wrong. A lot of kids were failing their classes. One girl was even saying she had to fill in for the role of parent for her younger brother because
I've heard that a lot.
Both of her parents got sick. So it's just taken such a toll, and there have been suicides. And I think it's a really sad topic, but it's important to talk about that, and it's important to recognize like how we can help and how we can like support each other. So let's see here. During the pandemic, 56% of young adults actually presented symptoms of depression and anxiety, which is over half of young adults.
That's insane.
It's a lot. And I think social media also plays a role in this, because social media, while it can be a good way to advocate for things, it can be a good way to stay connected, I think it can also be deteriorating to mental health in a lot of ways. So many parents say their teens have been texting. 64% of parents say their teens text. 56% say they use social media. 43% say they take part in online gaming, and 35% say they talk on their phone every day or almost every day. So, and few parents say their teens had been getting together in person with friends, indoor or outdoor, and there's so much less time to be outdoors and just in nature. And I think when you're inside all that time, and when you're on social media so much, when you're not around as many people as you're used to, it just takes a toll. And when you're scared at the same time, that can lead to anxiety, and then the depression factor of it all. And the rate of ER visits for suspected suicide attempts among 12 to 17-year-olds increased during the pandemic. And actually 4.5 million children are grieving the loss of somebody close to them, probably from COVID.
That's insane.
So many kids. Whether it's your grandpa, your sister, your brother, your mom, your dad, there are so many kids out there who are grieving.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. Okay, but I also want to talk about poverty and race and how those also kind of played a part in it. So one way to deal with like mental health issues is like therapy, and I think a lot of people talk a lot about that, like, oh, if you're having anxiety or depression, see a therapist.
I think we've talked about that in our episode.
Yeah, the average cost of therapy in the U.S. is $65 to $250 per session. Not everyone can afford that, right? Especially if you're in poverty. Definitely. And during, I think, the pandemic, so many parents lost their jobs, so they can't afford to pay that money, right? So 12.5 million kids were living in poverty in 2020, which is 1.2 million more than in 2019. And poverty is associated with higher rates of anxiety and depression. And when you have those higher rates of like mental health issues in poverty, but you also have that factor of like it's harder to get resources like therapy and help that you need, it's so much harder for those kids. But there are also a lot of things like community mental health services, mental health groups, online resources. Like there's this thing called Bliss, which is for like depression support. There's 7 Cups, crisis text line. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of online resources, and there's also like if you go to school, a counselor at your school. You know, you can see the counselor whenever you need. It's free. It's kind of like free therapy, which I think is a great thing. And friends and family, right? Never be afraid to voice your concerns. I think just getting it off your shoulders will help you so much. And whether you did experience this stuff or you're still experiencing it, then definitely keep this in mind. Poverty rates among Latino children rose by 4.2%. It rose from 23 to 27.3%. And it rose by 2.8% among Black children. This is during the pandemic, by the way. It was 29.2% for Black children. This amounts to an increase of around 700,000 more Latino children and 268,000 more Black children living in poverty in 2020 relative to 2019. But in contrast, the rates of white and Asian children in poverty remained relatively stable. So I think like races like Black people or Latino people were definitely affected by poverty, especially during this. And then as we talked about how poverty ties in with resources and mental health can make it so much harder. And in addition, children in female-headed families also saw a large increase in the poverty rate by 4.1%, and it was at 37.4%. So I think it's definitely unproportionate or disproportionately affecting a lot of groups of people. But something that's kind of on the bright side of all of this is that according to Healthline, the number of suicides during the year, during the whole pandemic decreased, which is surprising, actually.
I think it's like a lot of kids just have like mental disabilities, but since people aren't being bullied as much because they're
I think that does play a factor, but actually this website was also highlighting how like there's more support within everyone, like everyone's more open about their issues, like especially during the pandemic with social media, like people share more about their issues, and people, like you'll see posts about depression and like anxiety and all these different things, and there's just, everyone's a lot more open, and we're coming together. Like during the coronavirus, as much as we have spread apart with political differences, we have also come together, which I think has definitely helped like decrease the amount of suicides, which is awesome, but there still have been suicides, which is really, really sad. So, whatever you're experiencing, whether it be any type of mental health disorder, or maybe you just feel really isolated or alone, or you feel like you need help, talk to friends and family. If you can, there are therapists or therapy sessions that are a lot less expensive. Like some of them are actually only like $10 a session. So definitely if you can find one that's cheaper, or, there are online resources, community groups. You know how they have like yoga groups a lot of the time? Maybe there's like a mental health group. I think if that's not a thing, that should be a thing, like a free like mental health group. Okay, sorry, that was long. Okay, that's about it. Okay.
Next update is about Alabama, and how an Alabama doctor is refusing to treat patients.
Yeah, or not just patients, unvaccinated patients.
Unvaccinated.
Yeah. Okay, so Alabama has the lowest vaccination rate in the nation of the U.S. So there's a record number of hospitalizations, and Jason Valentine, who's a physician at Diagnostic and Medical Clinic and Infirmary Health, posted a photo on Facebook this week basically saying not to seek treatment if you are unvaccinated. So actually less than 36% of the population of Alabama is fully vaccinated. So there's a sign taped on this doctor's door saying, quote, Dr. Valentine will no longer be seeing patients that are not vaccinated against COVID-19. And the social media post on Facebook was him pointing to the sign on his door. And this is going to be a new policy for him starting October 1st, where he's not taking care of patients who are not vaccinated. So in the post, he also addressed many common concerns people have about getting vaccinated, saying there are, quote, no conspiracy theories, no excuses to stop people from getting vaccinated. He said, quote, we do not have any great treatments for severe disease, but we do have great prevention with vaccines. Unfortunately, many have declined to take the vaccine, and some end up severely ill or dead, he wrote. I cannot and will not force anyone to take the vaccine, but I also I cannot continue to watch my patients suffer and die from an entirely preventable disease. So 3 patients actually of his have asked where they could get the vaccine after he posted that. So I think he is influencing a lot of people.
That's good.
And he said, if they asked why, I told them COVID is a miserable way to die and I can't watch them die like that. Many people accused him of being a bully who doesn't believe in his oath to care for all, but a lot of people did support his decision. Governor Kay Ivey recently said, quote, it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks for the state's surge in new cases and hospitalizations.
And he's Republican too, so that's a big...
Wow, yeah, it is. A woman in Alabama, her name was Christy Carpenter, whose 28-year-old son, Kurt, died of COVID-19 2 months after he was diagnosed, told the Post last month how, quote, it took watching my son die and me suffering the effects of COVID for us to realize we need the vaccine.
Wow.
So I think it is just one doctor who at this point is doing that, but I think it's sending out a message to a lot of people. He's trying to like send out a message to not just his clinic or his wherever he works, but everywhere in the world kind of and in the country. So yeah.
All right, so our next update is about Greg Abbott. And as you know, Greg Abbott has been pushing back against a bunch of mask mandates. We talked about this. He was challenging a Supreme Court judge. But basically, recently on Tuesday, the state health department reported 20,000 new COVID cases, which is among like the highest number of cases since the pandemic began. And so many, 12,000 patients were hospitalized as of Monday. It's just been so insane, and he still refuses to require masks.
Yeah.
But he tested positive for COVID-19.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
he is fully vaccinated, but as we know now, the Delta variant can still,
yeah,
get to you.
But it's still way better to be vaccinated. And I heard that he's like asymptomatic.
Yes.
He doesn't have symptoms.
He said that he has no aches, no sore throat, nothing. But he's being treated with monoclonal antibodies, which I think Celine.
Oh yeah, I think it's where they like take the blood of someone who has antibodies and like turn it into a pill, basically.
Yeah, it's basically like giving you the antibodies to fight them.
Yeah.
But that also is like kind of shocking to a lot of people, but also not really shocking because he didn't really
support mass mandates of vaccination.
Yeah, and he wanted to ban them too, which is kind of insane.
Yeah.
But another 3 senators also announced their positive tests on Tuesday, including John Hickenlooper, Angus King, and Roger Wicker. King, an independent who like caucuses with Democrats, which basically means that when he's voting, he sides with Democrats. He said in the statement that he was mildly feverish and tested positive on Thursday. And he said, I'm taking this diagnosis very seriously, quarantining myself at home, and telling the few people I've been in contact with to get tested in order to limit any further spread.
And I'm pretty sure I heard that Greg Abbott's like wife didn't test positive.
Yeah, she's fine.
Yeah. So that's good at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these, Senator Wicker, actually, he's a Republican, but he was fully vaccinated, because it's not political. Vaccination shouldn't be political.
Yeah.
But he's fully vaccinated, and he's still got a corona, but he's in good health. So, yeah, that's that.
All right. Okay, is that everything for that? Okay. One last one, and then we're done.
Okay. Make it before 20 minutes.
Yes. Okay. So Texas Republican blames Black Americans for COVID surge.
Oh my God.
I know, this is just insane. So Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick claimed that African Americans were to blame for the ever-increasing wave of coronavirus cases. He said, quote, the COVID is spreading, particularly most of the numbers are with the unvaccinated, and the Democrats like to blame Republicans on that. Well, the biggest group in most states are African Americans who have not been vaccinated. The last time I checked, over 90% of them vote for Democrats. And Patrick said that, adding that it's up to Democrats and Republicans to get people vaccinated. So, number one, this statistic is like, what he said is just like, that's unfair, like racially unfair.
Because they have less access to vaccine clinics.
Yeah, and it's also false. Like, I looked at CNN and they did a fact check. Black people make up about 13% of the total population. They're not the biggest group of unvaccinated people either in Texas or across the U.S. An analysis by the Kaiser Family Foundation found that white adults account for the largest share of unvaccinated adults.
There you go.
And even if we dive into the rates, just the implication that Black people are especially to blame is just not, number one, not accurate, but it's just not fair to say that either.
Yeah.
And according to data analyzed by KFF, Black people made up over 50% of positive COVID cases in only two of the 35 analyzed places as of August 13th.
That's insane.
Yeah, 16th. And the District of Columbia and Mississippi, specifically in Patrick's state of Texas, Black people represent 15% of cases, Hispanics represent 52%, and white people 32%. So that's just so false. Yeah. Sylvester Turner, the Democratic mayor of Houston, who is African American, said Patrick's comments were, quote, offensive and should not be ignored. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Texas's highest hospitalization rates are happening since January.
Yeah, I think we talked about that too.
Anyways, so
that's just so inaccurate.
So stupid. I know.
What's your fun news for the week, Celine?
Okay, I have something. Let me pull it up.
I'll go first then.
Okay.
So mine is that an Olympian actually sold her silver medal so that she could help a family care for their child's heart surgery, I believe it was. Wait, did I get that right?
So sweet. Let me see.
I think baby's heart surgery. I think that's way more meaningful than a dumb medal. I mean, it's not dumb. It's a very important thing that they worked so hard for, but it's just a material, but that experience
that is such a kind and compassionate gesture. That's so amazing.
All right, what's yours?
Mike Richards, who's the host of Jeopardy, has actually stepped down as the host.
No one can beat Alex Trebek. Rest in peace, my man. But that's not really happy, but it's interesting.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know. That's the one.
Oh, I got a haircut. You can't really tell, but
your hair looks the same. I got a haircut, but my hair looks the same too.
My hair feels so much different though. It feels different.
No, your hair's just long, so like I feel like if your hair's long, no one notices.
They added layers, and I only need like 2 pumps of conditioner instead of like 10, so that's good.
That is her news update for the week.
Anyway, follow us. All of our socials will be linked. All of our sources will be linked.
Yes. Check out our website. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. Listen to our Fun Day Friday episode about the first week of high school. Bye.